Welcome to another episode of Soft Signal. My name is Varun and I'm joined by my co host Aditya. Hey, welcome to episode 32 now, I think.
Yeah, episode 32 it means 32 weeks, which is like almost 9 months. Okay, 8 months of having this cool show. So
Yeah,
that that makes it interesting.
for sure. And to everyone who's watching us for not the first time, thanks again for tuning in. And for everyone watching for the first time, we are two Indian cricket fans who talk about primarily Indian cricket, but we also don't just focus on one team. We talk about a wide ranging variety of topics related to cricket. And um, mentioning that this week we're going to talk all about captains. So, captaincy in cricket, I think, is unlike any other sport, at least the popular ones that we watch, team sports, where it's much more involved. The captain actually has a direct say in selection and tactics in real time as well. So, we thought this might be an interesting topic to explore. Uh, what do you, any introductory comments do you want to make?
Yeah, it's a good point because it's a good point you make about captains being more influential in cricket as compared to some of the other sports like football, where it's the manager that is usually running the show. I think in cricket, the captain needs to be the captain is definitely the guy running the show within the team, within the squad at least. So it's the captain that takes calls on strategy. The captain takes calls on the final selection, final 11 that are played in the match. The captain needs to be on point in terms of batting lineup, bowling strategies, fielding placement. So the captain really plays a very important role in cricket. Uh, and that, and really, I mean, it's obvious, right? Whenever you watch a cricket match, the camera also keeps panning onto the captain after every delivery just to see his expression, etc. So apart from just being the leader of the team on the field, the captain is also sort of carrying the image of the team off the field. So there's added responsibility there as well. So I mean, a cricket captain has a lot to do in that sense.
Yeah, and in some countries, like even in Australia, which isn't so crazy about cricket like India, for example, but the test captain is considered the second most important
Yes.
person after the prime minister. At least that's what I've heard. Might not necessarily be 100% true. But we'll start off with the Indian team right now because they're going through either a change in captaincy or a crisis in captaincy, depending on which way you look at it. Virat Kohli resigned as the T20 captain before the T20 World Cup a couple of months ago, and he was expected, at least he wanted to carry on in ODI and T20 cricket, but the selectors have this week um, sacked him from the ODI captaincy as well and appointed Rohit Sharma as captain for T20 and ODIs. So there's divided opinion about this. I don't know where to start because I think I wanted Rohit Sharma as a T20 captain for sure for a while. ODI captaincy didn't really matter. I mean, I think for me at least, it was like it could have been anyone. It could have been Virat. There was no reason to really change it.
Yeah, I mean, although I will say that it was probably, I mean, it was inevitable, right? The fact that um, there was a lot of talk about India not winning ICC trophies, um, and specifically India not being able to win ICC trophies under Virat's captaincy. So I think the change was gonna come at some stage. Remember, when we talk ICC trophies, we talk T20 cricket plus ODI cricket. Test matches not so much because the World Test Championship happens a lot, a lot more. It's a lot more rare in
Yeah,
terms of frequency as opposed to ICC events and T20s and ODIs. So if the reason or if the major drawback of Virat's captaincy was the lack of ICC trophies, then obviously they had to replace him as captain from both T20 and ODIs. It would have made no sense when you think of it now to just have Rohit as captain in T20 and Virat as captain in ODIs, if you try to rationalize it. So I think it was high time that, or it was about time that they made the change, simply because there was so much being spoken about it. Also, Virat's been captain for 7 years, which is a long time. In the overall scheme of things, you look at it through the years. Very few captains have been captain for so long. I mean, there's Dhoni, there's probably Stephen Fleming of New Zealand, who come to mind immediately. So maybe it was time for fresh ideas, fresh leadership. And also, Rohit has kind of proven himself as a good captain uh, at Mumbai Indians. So obviously, that prompted the selectors to to go down that route. I think Rohit's 33 now, or 34 maybe.
Before.
34. So probably they're thinking, 2 or 3 years more. The next few ICC events, he's going to be the captain. Let's give him the opportunity now, because let's face it, he's not going to get it. I mean, now's the best time. You delay it by a few more years, it's pointless anyway. So probably give him the opportunity now. He's proven himself as captain in the Mumbai Indians jersey. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I also just fear that this might. I don't know how Virat will now play against under Rohit in ODIs. In terms of, this is obviously egos involved there, because I know he wanted to give up the T20 captaincy voluntarily. There was talk that BCCI were waiting for him to announce that he was going to resign ODIs also, and he didn't, so they had to sack him. So that's going to leave a bad taste in his mouth for sure. Because, and I don't know if this is going to be the end of. Do you think Virat? Maybe this is a far-fetched thought from me, but do you think Virat will even play the 23 World Cup, the ODI World Cup?
Yeah, I think he'll play. I think he's still too good a batsman to not be in the team. So I think he will still play. But for sure, there's going to be a lot of adjustment to do within the team dynamics. Virat's someone with a big ego, right? So I wonder how he'll now settle in. I hope this doesn't cause, frictions within the team, meaning, different uh, camps within the team. I hope that doesn't happen. Also, interestingly, I heard some rumors that he's opted out of the ODIs in South Africa. I
Yeah,
don't know how true this is. It's still rumors, as they say. But if that's true, then that's not. And if this is the reason behind it, then it's not good. But to answer your question, I think he's still too good a batsman to not play the World Cup. And for sure, India need him as a batsman,
yeah.
if not as captain.
And hopefully this will help him find his form again. But I just want to make note of what a rise it's been for Rohit, right? He
Yeah.
was not even in the test team for a while ago, been made an opener in the past year or so, and then now he's even been promoted to the vice captaincy of the test team, which is like, I was skeptical about the ODI team announcement. I do. This is not something I agree with for sure. Like, I don't know how he's become the vice captain of the test team, honestly. And there are issues we've talked about, but I think Ashwin should have been the captain the test. I know he doesn't play every test overseas. He should play every test overseas, but yeah, they could have made. I don't think Rohit has been that consistent, or played test cricket that well, or even I don't even think he's captain in first class cricket. So I don't know where that came from. They could have. One good thing is that now Rahane is not the test vice captain, so he can now be dropped. Uh,
Yeah.
but that also means that now Rohit is going to play every match as an opener, and that means that we have Mayank Agarwal, Shubman Gill can play in the middle order, but Agarwal, Shaw, Rahul, all of these guys are going to be fighting for that one other opener spot.
Yeah, in a way, they're spoiled for choices, which is good. Um, your point about whether Rohit should be vice captain or not in Test match cricket is a good one. And I'm just thinking right now, what were the options? There was Ashwin, as you said, but then again, like you said as well, he doesn't play all Test matches overseas, which could have worked against him. Rahane was the incumbent vice captain, but let's face it, he's going to be dropped for sure now.
Yeah.
And removing him as vice captain was the first way to was the only way to drop him, because it's a little bit difficult, a little bit awkward to drop your vice captain, right? Even from the playing 11. So I think that's a clear sign that Rahane is probably not going to be in the first 11 anymore. That leaves who? That leaves Pujara, but not sure about
Might be
Pujara's
dropped also.
number. Yeah, and he's also not going through a very good patch. Um, Fast bowlers, well, when we look at the regulars, there's Bumrah, there's Ishan Sharma. These guys are regular, Shami, but um, they don't tend to become captains. But we'll come to that later. And then who's left? There's just Rohit Sharma. Um, you could argue that why not one of the younger guys like KL Rahul, Rishabh Pant, etc. But then I'm thinking it would be odd to have your ODI and T20 captain play under the vice captaincy of somebody who's not even vice captain in the ODIs and T20 teams. I mean, or so it's a little bit of that. I think that also they take into account. So by virtue of cancellation, I think Rohit Sharma had to get the job. The good thing, at least, is that he's in form. I mean, he's batted decently in the Test match opportunities that he has got. So at least you can say that it's not like they've replaced an out of form vice captain in Rahane and replaced him with an out of form vice captain in Rohit Sharma. At least that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because I again also don't think Rohit will play Test beyond 23. I think the World Test Championship final might be the last this, or they might play till the 25 cycle, but so they might have to groom another vice captain as well. And Ashwin is not that option also because he's also 35. So yeah, one will have to be one of the young guys. If Rahul can get some consistency in the Test team, then yes. But that will mean we'll have Rohit and Rahul as our openers, unless Rohit shifts to the middle order, which is where he bats in first class as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think one of the younger guys is going to have to step up. But more than stepping up, I'm sure the BCCI has already started looking at options for the future. That is after Rohit. So yeah, KL Rahul comes to mind. He's a regular in the team. He plays all three formats. He's been in good form. He comes to mind. Uh, Rishabh Pant, of course, has already been touted as a potential leader. I think he was named as vice captain of the ODI team.
I think they haven't announced yet.
Rahul. Okay, it's not announced yet as yet. But for me, I think one other name that definitely should be thrown into the mix if it hasn't already is Shreyas Iyer. Um, I I think in terms of captaincy material, he's probably even ahead of Rishabh Pant and KL Rahul for me, which actually was which makes me wonder why Delhi Capitals did not keep him as captain. I mean, he had a good run.
Also, yeah.
Yeah, he had a good run as captain. He worked well with Ricky Ponting. So I'm really surprised as to why he was let go by Delhi Capitals. Because I genuinely think that he would be a better captain than Rishabh Pant and KL Rahul. So for me, if it was up to me to decide, I would put Shreyas Iyer at the top of that list for future captains of India.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see what happens. Definitely interesting times ahead. But wanted to talk about another aspect, which is now we have three formats for a while now in captaincy in cricket, and for the most part, there are in T20 we see different captains, but there is split captaincy that happens, but we have the same captain across all three formats. So if you think of New Zealand with Williamson, Pakistan with Babar Azam, or now South Africa have changed their captain multiple times, but I think, is there a place for different formats, different captains, and if so, is there a place for three captains in all three formats, or do you think there's like one white ball, one red ball?
So my opinion on this is that there is space for it, there is room for it, and the reason that makes it necessary is workload management. It is basically that. Um, they play so much cricket today. They play all forms of cricket. Plus, there's franchisee cricket. I think in terms of workload management, there is room for this, and it needs to be done. What I don't agree with is having three captains for different formats. I think that there could, if there is split captaincy, it should be one captain for test and one, so red ball, and one captain for white ball. And I say that because, the white ball format is still sort of, a little similar. You have, similar players playing that format. You don't have, ODI specialists or T20 specialists. So, ODI players are more equipped to play as T20 players and vice versa. Whereas in test matches, the tactics and the strategy is completely different from white ball cricket. You have specific test match specialists like Pujara and Rahane, for example. Your fast bowlers need to be of a certain kind. Your spin bowlers need to be of a certain kind. So I think there is like a difference between red ball cricket and white ball cricket. And so you can have two different captains for red ball and white ball. But I think there isn't enough difference between ODI and T20 cricket to drive the necessity of a different captain in those formats.
Yeah, I agree with you that they're inherently different formats and require different skill sets. My view is that different captains are okay as long as the player does not play all three formats. So what I mean by that is, if you look at Australia, they have now Pat Cummins as captain and they have Aaron Finch as limited overs captain. But Aaron Finch doesn't play Test cricket. So if you have a player, at least in my view, who is good enough to captain one form of the game and is in the squad and is a player in the other format as well, then I think that player should be the captain across all three. Like, if you, unless there's or at least at some point that person should be the captain, and then yeah, with workload management or whatever, they can give up one format if they like. But from what I've seen is that players then would just retire from that format altogether rather than give up the captaincy and continue to play. I can't think of any examples. Like, even if I think of West Indies, they have different captains and they have Jason Holder and then they have Pollard, I think, is the captain of ODI and T20, but
Yeah.
Pollard again doesn't play tests. So my view is just that if someone is in a player in all three formats and is a captain in a particular format, then they can just be captain across all three.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's a good point. I think what that does is that it probably also, prevents any sort of ego clashes between the two captains.
Yeah.
So it prevents that. So that's one way of looking at it. Um, but it's interesting. This topic of captaincy is always interesting because it's more than just captaincy, right? It's also managing the different egos of players.
Yeah.
So
Man management is definitely an underrated skill of captains and coaches, actually. So we talked about different kinds of captains. We've through cricket history across formats, most captains have been batsmen. There have been a couple. They were great, all the great all rounders of the 80s, like Kapil Dev, Imran Khan. They were Ian Botham. They were all captains at some point, and Kapil Dev and Imran Khan more than others. But we haven't seen out and out bowlers being captains. And this is not just fast bowlers, even spinners. There haven't been too many. Like, I can only think of Anil Kumble for a brief period. Then there was Vettori, who was captain of New Zealand, but he was also more of an all rounder. So, what do you think is the main reason behind that? My initial thought is it's a bowlers are rotated more often. They have shorter careers sometimes. But anything else that comes to mind?
yeah, I think the other thing that causes this is that, as a bowler, you're actually setting the play. You're setting the play, right? So the bowlers are the ones who are delivering the play, and the batsmen are just responding. So sometimes the thought is that as a bowler, if you're captain, you'd probably tend to overbowl yourself because you feel like you need to do everything, lead by example, or you'd underbowl yourself because you probably think that you're not the perfect guy in that situation to make the play. So because of that, it sometimes as a batsman, who would then be a fielder in when you're bowling. The batsman, as a fielder, you're able to kind of get a higher a helicopter view, as they say, and accordingly, give the ball to a bowler, or give the or change bowlers through their different spells, etc. But when you're a bowler yourself and you're having to captain the side, you might tend to underbowl or overbowl yourself. That is the thought. So on top of what you said, about bowlers having shorter careers and bowlers being rotated around more, I think that is the other reason that sort of explains why we don't see bowling captains, out and out bowlers as captains, especially fast bowlers. I mean, I can only think of Courtney Walsh,
Yeah.
who was an out and out fast bowler, proper number 11, who was a captain for a reasonable amount of time. Um, Otherwise, you don't see it happening, which is why when Pat Cummins was named captain, I'm sure all the fast bowlers around the world uh, did a secret hop, skip, and jump, and sort of thought that now maybe they can be captains of their international teams as well.
Yeah, Cummins one is surprising because Australia in particular have not even gone for all-rounders as captains. They've always had batsmen and typically always the best batsmen in the team. If you look at Border, Steve Waugh, Ponting, Clark, and then Smith. So they've always had the best batsmen in the team. So this is a really radical change from Australia. I have a feeling because there was probably no one else they could have made. And my suspicion, this is critical, is that they are going to, in a year, say that Cummins' workload is too much and just make Steve Smith the captain again.
Yeah, it could happen. This could be a larger strategy from the Australian Cricket Board to sort of announce or make Steve Smith captain again. But I think, I mean, I don't know. It's like, the thing is, I've not played cricket at a professional capacity to understand this as well as, we can only think about those two reasons. And I think those are the only two reasons, actually, when you think of it, as to why fast bowlers don't become captain. And it does make sense, it does make sense. I think your captain needs to be kind of stable, right? He needs to be around the team, and he needs to be able to make decisions from a distance, which is what a batting captain is able to do when fielding. So it's going to be interesting to see how Pat Cummins overcomes all of this. But I would really like to see him do well. I think he seems to be quite a decent and honest kind of guy.
Yeah, he's a very
Uh,
likable cricketer, which is very against the norm for Australian cricketers.
exactly right. So therefore, I really hope he does well as captain. And also then, that would open another dimension of fast bowlers being captain, which is, like we discussed, is generally not the case. Because I'm still trying to think, and I can only remember Courtney Walsh being an out and out fast bowler, number
Yeah,
11 as captain. Even Jason Holder, he's more of an all
all
rounder.
rounder. Yeah,
So, who else? I mean, can you think of any fast bowlers, out
I
and
think
out
Wakar
fast bowlers?
Yunus was a captain for a brief period, but he was a really bad captain.
Yeah,
And then Wasim Akram and all are not. They are also more all rounders, not number
yeah,
11s or anything. So
exactly, exactly. Now, some might argue that Pat Cummins is an all rounder as well, but let's face it, he's more of a bowler than
yeah,
an all rounder. I think he's yeah, his primary skill is a bowler. He will not get into the Australian team on the strength of his batting. So
yeah, for sure. Uh, so last question or topic where we can discuss is: do you think there is the best player, whether batsman or bowler, best player in the team should be the captain? Because, uh, for example, Sachin was never a great captain, and there was talk that because he was so great, and especially in the 90s when he was captain, he was much better than everyone, like by a mile. There was no comparison, and he expected the same performance from all the players, which is not fair. Of course, that's not just cricket. That's just we work slave away in corporate life. Also, that's something that can be apply to any form where you're leading something, right? You have to understand strengths and weaknesses of everyone. So does that mean like a best player would not necessarily be the best captain for the team? Like Virat now is actually the best player, and we're seeing he's been a decent captain, but then we're now seeing cracks, right? I don't know whether that's what that has, whether that's had to do with anything. So your views on that?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the best player can is necessarily the best captain, because the skill set is different, right? So a captain needs to be more strategic. He needs to understand man management. He needs to know when to bring a bowler on. Needs to understand when to bring a spinner on. Needs to understand how the pitch is playing. Needs to understand the opposition. Needs to understand how the opposition is thinking, and all of those things. So your best batsman might not necessarily have those skills. So that obviously doesn't make the best batsman the best captain. Um, Sachin's an example, right? Although with him it was a different issue, and you pointed that out. It was just the level of expectations. So it's a different issue. Think of you think of
Even
other
Lara
captains.
was such a,
Brian Lara,
yeah,
exactly. Superb genius batsman and everything, but not such a good captain.
true.
Stephen Fleming, he wasn't the best player of in the New Zealand team at the time. One or two ODI centuries, probably single digit test centuries as well, but very good captain. Arjuna Ranatunga was never there. Arvinda De Silva was the best player
Yeah,
of Sri Lanka in those years. He was captain before Arjuna Ranatunga for a brief while, but he wasn't a very good captain. Ranatunga was a better captain than player. Case in point, right? Um, so those are just a few examples. Owen Morgan is a decent ODI player. He's not a great ODI player. He's not a bad ODI player, but he's a good captain. So, history has shown, or even recent history has shown, that your best player needn't be your captain. Uh, it does help, of course, if you are really, if you're a very good batsman, it does help your case. But you don't need to be the best batsman in the team to bet, or the best bowler in the team to be captain. I do not agree with that. What I do agree with, though, is that you still need to be contributing enough to be captain. Now, I'm going to make a controversial statement here. Look at Dhoni today in CSK. He's captain, okay, but let's face it, he doesn't contribute with the bat anymore, right?
yeah,
Simply because his skill level isn't the same as before. Um, Personally, I feel that he didn't contribute enough as a batsman for CSK and even India towards the back end of his career. Yet he was still there only for his captaincy skills. So this happens, but it's really rare. It shouldn't happen. It's extremely rare. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, the best player needn't be the best captain simply because the skill sets are different.
yeah. And the contribution factor is why Rahane will never be captain again.
Yeah,
Something we
exactly.
can all celebrate. Um, but yeah, even Ponting, right? For example, he had a great side. I don't think he was a great captain, because
Yeah.
whenever they was under pressure, like the 2005 Ashes, he lost that, right? So moment the opposition played slightly better, he was found wanting. So again, another example of why the best player doesn't have to be the best captain. Okay, I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Maybe we can end with just a few, two, three, maybe of our favorite captains. I'll go first.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Stephen Fleming. I think Stephen Fleming is probably one of my favorite captains of all time, because New Zealand team was, we say they are dark horses and all these things punch above their weight now, but in the 90s and 2000s when he was captain, they were even like more of a average team, but they still did some great, like they reached semis of 99 World Cup. They won the 2000 Champions Trophy, and they were decent side in Test cricket as well, especially at home. So Stephen Fleming is perfect example of a good man manager, and he's even now carried that forward into coaching with CSK in the IPL. And one other name I want to mention, and I hope I'm not overlapping into yours, is Graham Smith. because Graham Smith and came out of total left field, right? There's some inspiration for the Indian selectors right there. He had played just a handful of matches at 22, being the captain, and with some great players in the team. There was Pollock, Kirsten, all these old guys were still there. There was Callis, he managed captain across generations, and he was not that successful in terms of titles in terms of ODI cricket, but in Test cricket, they won everywhere except India. But yeah, one of the best, I think, captains in the modern day.
Yeah, I think, uh, yeah, I agree. I mean, these are great captains. Thankfully, you didn't overlap completely with my list. So I would say that Dhoni is really has
Yeah,
been a great captain. But let's not talk about Dhoni because you can really talk a lot at length about this. Okay, so let's keep him aside. I would agree, Stephen Fleming, surely one of the best captains of that era, and he always sort of rose to the occasion, even as a batsman. Not a great ODI record, but he contributed when it mattered, and he led a team of dark horses the whole time. And obviously, he got them together and got them to play and punch above their weight. So Stephen Fleming for sure. Excellent captain for me. I think Michael Vaughan, also a good captain, especially the way he led England during the 2005 Ashes. There's a lot of documentaries all over the place, explaining uh, how they were able to play at that level in 2005. So it's not just those five Test matches. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the work goes on behind the scenes before the series actually begins, etc. So a lot of inspiration from there. I think Michael Vaughan was a good captain, was quite a good captain in those few years that he managed to be at the top of ECB of English cricket. So yeah, those are the two guys who stand out for me. But you're right about Graham Smith as well. Yeah, he became captain right after the 2003 World Cup. Right, he was 22 or 23, and then he was just thrown into it. And I think he came out the other side with flying colors. So yeah, that's another good captain that comes to mind after you mentioned it. Yeah,
and just special mention, actually, we mentioned him earlier on in the episode, but Arjuna Ranatunga, just from an Asian standpoint also, in the 90s, he didn't really give a shit, right? He would just, like, when they no-balled Murli, he just, like, were going off, standing by our players, especially when Sri Lanka were not a very strong board, they still aren't, but in Australia, it's really, it, even though I'm not Sri Lankan, as an Asian or a brown person, it really
yeah.
fills you with that kind of pride, right? Like, we
It's
can give it back.
commendable. Yeah, it's commendable. I mean, you read about some of the stories of the Sri Lankan team in '95, the one that went to Australia. I remember reading about it, and apparently they were put up in like a two-star hotel or something, while the Australian team was in a five-star hotel. And Arjuna Ranatunga was the first one to question, all of this. He's like, "Why is this happening? Why is our accommodation like this?" Okay, fine, there was a money factor behind it and stuff, but why are we sort of always, treated treated in a poorer fashion as compared to them? And then, like you said, he stood up for his players. The no balling of Murli, you know, he stood up for him. Then he stood up for him in the ODI series later, and he continued. He stood up for him throughout his career, even after that. So yeah, it takes a serious amount of guts for us for the captain of a really small, non-influential cricket team to be able to do what he did. And then, of course, he inspired them to win the World Cup the year after.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was quite amazing. I just feel that we were probably too young at that
yeah,
stage to understand the impact of his captaincy. We probably didn't see enough, but I'm sure we would have had an even greater opinion of him if we would have seen enough of his captaincy growing up.
yeah. Maybe one day we'll get a Sri Lankan person on this show and actually talk about this, because there's probably a lot more to this story than we even know or feel.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, So that was a fun episode. Talking about captaincy is always interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as well. And we will be back next week where we'll preview India's tour of South Africa and hopefully stay away from the off-field stuff and just focus on the cricket.
Yeah, because that'll be one hell of a series. I hope India can pull off a series win there, because that's the only one left. Uh,
Yeah.
well, there is New Zealand, but I
Well,
think
but they
no,
won
we
in New
won in New
Zealand.
Zealand. We have
Yeah,
one
in
in
2008.
2009. Yeah,
Yeah, 8,
yeah.
9 or something. Yeah.
So actually, this is the only one left. So that should be an amazing series.
And they won't get a better chance. But we'll talk more about that next week. Thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.